What if Ronald Reagan never ran for president in 1980? 1980 U.S. election, George H.W. Bush vs. Jimmy Carter. Without Ronald Reagan in the race, George H.W. Bush becomes the favorite for the Republican nomination. He wins in a landslide with 386 electoral votes. George H.W. Bush's first term. Agenda. Bush's first term focuses on universal health care, proposing child care, and making the economy better. 1984 U.S. election. Ted Kennedy vs. George H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush wins re-election with 500 electoral votes. George H.W. Bush's second term. Is it good or bad? Bush has a meh second term. The economy continues to struggle and prices do go up. And Bush lies about raising taxes, but he does have a couple of accomplishments. The Persian Gulf War starts in late April of 1987, but ends in December earlier that year, and then prices begin to go down, and that's pretty successful if you ask me. But he is unpopular with many Republicans and Democrats alike because he didn't keep his promise to not raise taxes, like in real life. Anyway, 1988 U.S. election, Ted Kennedy vs. Bob Dole. Ted Kennedy wins the 88 election, becoming the first brother of a president to do so. Ted Kennedy would lower taxes and reduce child care, and make sure that military spending goes way down, unlike in real life. Things are looking good for the Democrats heading into 1992. 1992 election. Ted Kennedy vs. Harold Stassen. Ted Kennedy wins re-election in a landslide with 505 electoral votes to Stassen's 32 electoral votes, and Kennedy's 71% to Stassen's 26%. 1996 election, Garrett Hart vs. Harold Stassen. After losing the presidency to Ted Kennedy, Harold Stassen tries again in 96 and gets the Republican nomination, despite him being way too old for it. Garrett Hart was Ted Kennedy's vice president and secured the Democrat nomination. But however, heading into the debates, Stassen is criticized for his age, and he refuses to drop out of the race, which cost him the election in rural areas. As Garrett Hart wins the election with 538 electoral votes, and Stassen gets 0 electoral votes. 2000 election, George W. Bush vs. Garrett Hart. In this timeline, Garrett Hart has a bad presidential term. The economy goes terrible, and everyone knows that in this timeline, everyone knows that the 9/11 is gonna happen because of Garrett Hart signing the attack bill, which made it legal for people to attack certain places without permission and without being captured. And Garrett Hart is extremely unpopular due to his signing of it. So things aren't looking good for Garrett Hart heading into his re-election bid in 2000. George W. Bush wins the election with 467 electoral votes. 9/11, does it still happen? Like I mentioned earlier, the attack bill requires people to attack anywhere where they could without being captured, and 9/11 does happen, but Bush signs a bill which makes 9/11 stops, as Bush makes a deal to give them $1 million if 9/11 stops, and the deal is eventually made. And the Iraq War doesn't happen because 9/11 stopped. The Iraq War doesn't happen. 2004 election. Joe Lieberman vs. George W. Bush. George W. Bush wins re-election with 386 electoral votes. The 2008 recession, it still happens in this timeline, and Bush's approval rating goes even lower than in real life to an approval rating of only 1.5%. 2008 U.S. election, Joe Lieberman vs. Dick Cheney. Because of the Republicans' unpopularity, Joe Lieberman wins in a landslide with 501 electoral vote. 2012 U.S. election, Joe Lieberman vs. John McCain. John McCain runs for the Republican nomination again after losing it to Dick Cheney in 2008. McCain barely wins the Republican nomination on the first, second, and third, and fourth, and fifth ballot, but fails to win the general election because Lieberman is extremely popular because of stopping the recession. And Lieberman wins in a small landslide with 442 electoral votes. 2016 U.S. presidential election, Hillary Clinton vs. Jeb Bush. Hillary Clinton wins the 2016 election with 278 electoral votes to Bush's 260. The murder of George Floyd and the COVID-19 pandemic. The murder of George Floyd does still happen, as it would in real life. And the COVID-19 pandemic doesn't happen. Clinton has a good first term. But however, without a major crisis, people find Clinton kind of boring because there was no major crisis. Clinton isn't doing enough to help the economy. Like, there's no Ukraine or COVID now. So people find Clinton to be a bit boring. But Clinton still remains popular. 2020 U.S. election, Hillary Clinton vs. Nikki Haley. Hillary Clinton destroys Nikki Haley with 359 electoral votes and wins a second term. Heading into 2024, Democrats nominate Gavin Newsom, but Newsom wasn't popular like Lieberman or Clinton or Bush. 2024 election, Ron DeSantis vs. Gavin Newsom. Ron DeSantis wins the 2024 election. What if Ronald Reagan never ran for president in 1980 timeline? 1980, George H.W. Bush. 1984, George H.W. Bush. 1988, Ted Kennedy. 1992, Ted Kennedy. 1996, Garrett Hart. 2000, George W. Bush. 2004, George W. Bush. 2008, Joe Lieberman. 2012, Joe Lieberman. 2016, Hillary Clinton. 2020, Hillary Clinton. 2024, Ron DeSantis.